Articles in scholarly journals are how scientists, they're how social scientists, they're how people in the academic world basically talk to each other, basically share their information, especially with a wide group of people. It's not like emails or Facebook. You're actually creating an article based on your research and then getting it published so that everybody else in the field can read it and look at it and possibly use it as part of their own research or duplicate your research to see if it works. The big part of the scientific method is sharing this information so that other people can work with it as well. And so here's the thing. If you are a social scientist, say, and you go through and you've got a grant and you do some research and you'd like to get it published, well, the ideal thing to do is to write up an article. They're usually 20 to 30 pages. They're very in-depth works. It lists all of your data. It's got all of your citations. All your ducks are in a row. You try to make it as perfect as possible before you send it into journals. Now, these journals are places, well, I'm going to show you. The Johns Hopkins University Press, these journals are put out by universities, publishing houses, foundations. Interestingly enough, the journals don't normally pay people for these articles. You are doing this as a scientist above and beyond what you would normally do with your job. This is considered an important part of scholarship. So, say I do an article, my ducks are in a row, it checks out fine. So I send it to my favorite journal, or a journal that I think might be interested in it. I'm going to use, for example, out of the Johns Hopkins University Press, Technology and Culture. I can go to the Johns Hopkins University Press, call up their guidelines for authors, and see what they want. They tell me who to send it to, etc. But first I have to look very carefully. It says for submissions that this journal is a peer-reviewed journal. What does that mean? It basically means that if I send in my article, the editor takes my article. The editor might not know that much about my field. And if I'm doing really good scholarly research, there aren't going to be an awful lot of people who actually do know about my field. So what the editor does is that the editor has a handful of people that they know are experts in this field, and the editor will send your article without your name on it to 2 referees who will go through that article with a fine-tooth comb to see if you've made any mistakes, if you've got quality research, if you haven't copied other people, committed plagiarism, that sort of thing. And they're going to write back to the editor and say either this is a wad of horse whatever, don't touch it, or they're going to say revise and rewrite. There's these problems, and they'll have a list of problems with it, and they'll send it back to the author to revise it. Or, and this is beyond everybody's wildest dreams, they'll accept it right away. Say, print that. That's a great article. That's great research. So that's a peer-reviewed journal. This is what we're going to be using, hopefully, for our research. This means that this is an article that experts in the field have taken the time to review. This is not lightweight stuff. So, I send it to the journal. They approve it. Now, if they're not peer-reviewed journals, if they're like a Wikipedia page, think about the nature of Wikipedia. Anybody can get into Wikipedia and change the article. And then somebody else can go in and change the article. Now, Understandably, there are referees, there are people taking a look at it, but it's on a strictly volunteer basis, and there are hundreds of thousands of articles on Wikipedia. Nobody can check them thoroughly. And so you're bound to find mistakes. They happen. Even with the old encyclopedias that your grandparents had on the shelf, they had mistakes in them too. They couldn't be kept up to date. It took a while to write all those articles. It took a while to publish these encyclopedias and get them distributed. And by the time they got out, the information in them might have been out of date. So, consequently, this is why we want to go to these peer-reviewed, published journal articles to make sure that we're dealing with quality research that people have reviewed, that people have checked over. Now, you might also find websites where people have done a good job of researching. That's when you have to be really careful about checking the About section of those websites, making sure they're clear. Now, when you're dealing with Wiki, and let me tell you how you can use Wiki to your advantage as a research tool. You're researching your cultural artifact. You look it up on Wiki. It's got a nice big long article. You will notice there's little numbers, endnotes, or footnotes as they are, for those pieces of the article in Wiki. Go to those footnotes. Get down to the bottom of the page. Start looking at those footnotes. Those might be, just might be, those quality peer-reviewed journal articles that someone else has already used. There you go. Go to those peer-reviewed journal articles in the footnotes. Use those for your research. That way you're avoiding the mistakes of Wiki, and why not go to the better source? Journals are essential for what we do in college. So it's essential to know how to navigate all of the databases in the library. So that's going to be part number 3 of our talk.